Hi there. So there's something that we do that we may not even be aware of when we're healing from betrayal, but it's actually preventing your healing. That's what I want to talk about today. Think about it. You've been betrayed, you've been duped, blindsided, deceived, cheated on, lied to, all of this. And what's something you can be doing to prevent your healing? Protecting the betrayer. So often we protect the betrayer at our own expense. Now you may be thinking, why in the world would we do that? We didn't do anything wrong. Why are we covering for the person who shattered our heart in a million pieces, who stole from us, who did whatever? Why would we do this? It's so interesting because in the study that I did, it even showed that it is really common to protect the betrayer. So there are so many reasons. I want to highlight three of them because I want you to be aware of this. If this is what you're doing, it's preventing you from the healing that you need. But understand, there are so many reasons why we do what we do, but I want you aware of it because we cannot change what we're not aware of. So the first reason out of the three, I'm going to start with one. These are the most common that I've seen, is illusion. And when I mean illusion, I mean we know people look at the betrayer a certain way, and we don't want to be the one to shatter that illusion. For example, let's say they are so well loved within the community. Everyone thinks they're a great guy or a great woman. Everyone thinks they're so honest and lovable and all of these things. So if this is the perspective that everyone has, we don't want to be the one to say, hey, you know what? That's actually not the case behind closed doors. This is what's truly going on. So when there is that illusion of how that person is perceived, we don't want to be the one to shatter that illusion. So that may be one reason why you're doing that. Another reason, confrontation. Think about it. If everyone loves the betrayer and they look at them a certain way, we fear that confrontation we will inevitably have when we're the one to counteract what their perspective and their perception of that person is. Like, for example, they think they're so great and so wonderful and so loving and so honest, and here you are sort of going along with it, and then for you to say, well, actually, I'm really struggling with with what this person did. They betrayed me and whatever. Now you're headed for a confrontation, and we don't want to do that because we're so bombarded by all of the emotions that we're experiencing, and this is just something else that we may not have the strength for. Like, think about it also. People are coming to this through their own lens, through their own perspective. So I'm going to give you a scenario. This is not always the case, certainly just a scenario. So let's say there's a husband and wife, and let's say the husband has an affair, and you want support from your mother-in-law, and you bring this to your mother-in-law's attention, and your mother-in-law's like, what are you talking about? That he would never do that, or whatever that moment is going to be, because now she has to process what her son did. Again, not saying it is always the husband who cheats or has an affair at all. I'm just using an example. So now here's this confrontation where you have to shatter her belief of who her son has been as a husband, let's say. You see what I mean? So you know that's coming, or you may think it's coming, and that could be so overwhelming that you're like, you know what, I just can't even deal with it. I'm not going to do anything. Now, before I get to the third, I want to bring up something really, really important. We already talked about illusion, if people look at the betrayer a certain way. We also talked about the fear of confrontation. But here's the thing. If you are working on rebuilding with this person, is this person taking full and complete responsibility for their behaviors and their actions? Are they remorseful? Is there regret? Is there apology? Because here's what I see as well. When the betrayed is covering for the betrayer, and the betrayer is totally fine with that because they want to maintain their reputation, they want to maintain that perspective that everyone has, is if this is what you're doing, I want you to really look at that, because when you're rebuilding, the whole idea is you want to rebuild something totally and completely new. And if someone isn't even willing to take responsibility for their actions, how different are they? Right? If this is supposed to be an opportunity where someone sees it so clearly, they get it. Here's your heart shattered in a million pieces, and you're saying, okay, please be careful. I am carefully and I am terrified, but I'm going to give you my heart back. It's in a million pieces. Please take care of this and let's try to rebuild this. And if the betrayer knows the amount of pain you're going through, and let's say friends or relatives or whoever is saying, wow, you know what, they're acting crazy, why are they so sensitive, why are they crying all the time, why are they so upset, why do they have such a short fuse, because they have no idea what's really going on. And the betrayer is willing to let you go through that without taking that responsibility. I want you to be aware of what's going on. And I'll tell you, there were 3 groups in my study who did not heal. One, they were hanging on to their story for dear life. They had their story, they were sticking with it. They were betrayed. This was their story. That was the end of it. They didn't heal. The second group, this was the group where they were numbing, avoiding, and distracting. So maybe they ran to the doctor who put them on a mood stabilizer or anti-anxiety medication. They were emotionally eating, they were drinking, whatever it was. May have made the day a bit easier to get through, not without a price. They didn't heal. But the third group, this was the group where the betrayer had very little consequences. So whether it was out of financial fear, not wanting to break up a family, religious reasons, that was a big one. They did all they could to put it behind them without actually moving through the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough. And I saw 2 things with this group. Number 1, a further deterioration of the relationship. And number 2, this was the group that was the most physically sick. And this was the group that was the most physically sick with symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome, because nothing was really changing. The betrayer wasn't really changing. There wasn't a dramatic shift or consequence. So if nothing changes, nothing changes. So I want you to be very aware, if this is what you're doing, it's holding you back from the healing that you deserve. So we talked about illusion. We talked about confrontation. I want to get to the third one, and that's doubt. And when I say doubt, what's the reason why we're covering for the betrayer? We're not doing the work to heal. We're just suffering and struggling in silence. When I say doubt, I mean this. You may have been coming from a lifetime of betrayals. You may have a limiting set of beliefs that has you thinking you're not lovable, you're not worthy, you're not deserving. This is the best you can hope for. So when that's the belief that's in place, and then you have relationships that demonstrate that, you may think, well, you know what? I mean, this is all I can hope for. This is all I can expect, because I'm only, a certain level of worthy, right? Which is crazy, by the way. But if that's not cleaned up, you may think, well, I should just take it. I mean, and then on top of it, this is what I see too. Now, because this is what you've been dealing with for years, if not decades, you have the symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome. Now you have accelerated aging and all these illnesses and maybe weight gain because you're emotional eating. And now on top of it, you're thinking, well, who else in the world would ever take me, would ever love me? So now you're thinking, I better just find a way to be okay with this. And it just becomes this big, ugly mess. And this is why we always want to clean up what led to certain beliefs and behaviors that had you feeling less than. I am not suggesting for 1 minute the betrayal was your fault. It is your opportunity. You want to come out of an experience thinking, wait a second, now is the chance. I've written the script that I tolerate a certain level of disrespect, that I can have boundaries crossed, that I don't mean no when I say no, that I don't stand my ground, whatever it is. That's what I'm talking about, where now you have an opportunity to change anything and everything that no longer serves, so that you don't have that doubt. Because if that's not cleared up, it follows you around in every relationship you have. And now think about it in a typical, the gaslighter, the narcissist, the relationship, quote unquote, works when you're off kilter, when you feel less than, when you don't feel worthy, when you do second guess yourself. And I want you to think about that. If the only reason why it works is because you don't feel well, what does that tell you? And now the relationship is in trouble when you start regaining your confidence, when you start looking at things differently, when you start rebuilding your health, you change your beliefs and all of that, because you realize, wait a second, why is it that I'm giving 90% to this relationship? The betrayer is giving 10%, and now, and I'm not saying this is the case always, and now here I am covering for them because everyone thinks they're so great, they're so wonderful. I'm afraid of the confrontation from people that don't understand what's happening behind closed doors. I'm filled with fear and self-doubt because of my set of limiting beliefs that I've allowed to create a certain level of worthiness that I feel for myself. This is why we need to clean all of that up. I want you to understand, you are lovable, worthy, and deserving. You need boundaries in place. You need a new set of beliefs, because if you don't, these things don't change. You know, I remember a woman who wanted to work with me, and she had decades worth of betrayals from her husband. And she was talking to me about the idea of changing her limiting beliefs. Now, this is wonderful, but this is the part that made it that I wasn't her person and I wasn't able to help her, because she wanted to change the beliefs so that she'd be okay with his betrayals, so that she wouldn't be bothered when he did it again, so that it would be fine that this is the way she'd be treated in relationships. I just couldn't be a part of that. So we want to change those beliefs so we realize who we are, not so that we can be okay with tolerating abuse or disrespect, right? Very different thing. So this is the idea. You want to move through the proven predictable 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough, because as you do, you will rewire those beliefs. You will see the things clearly. And it may really hit you that why is it that here I was betrayed and now my betrayer is completely okay with me struggling and suffering, taking the additional heat of me having to deal with all these things myself because they're unwilling to take responsibility for their actions. This is one of the biggest reasons why I created a rebuild program for the betrayer. It's one thing when someone is the betrayer, but when they're unwilling to do something different, you want to think about, why is that okay with you? Now, there are many betrayers who realize, oh my gosh, what the heck am I doing? I just blew up the heart and the trust and the love of the very person I love the most and loves me the most. That person can transform just as the betrayed can. But if they're unwilling to take responsibility, they've given away their power completely. If they're unwilling to have that remorse, that regret, that apology, I want you as the betrayed to know what set of circumstances you are willing to tolerate. And if you're unsure, if it's okay, if you have children, if you have anybody you love, if they were to come to you with the same set of circumstances, what would you recommend? I know I gave you a lot to think about, but if you are protecting the betrayer, know that there are so many reasons. One is illusion. We don't want to break that illusion that other people have. Number 2, we fear that confrontation. Number 3, we're filled with fear and self-doubt just because of our own programming. The good news is you can clear up all of it. So figure out if you're doing any of those things or more, and you deserve to heal. Healing is waiting for you when you move through the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough. I hope this helps. I'll see you next time.